Hey, how's it going, everyone? This is Mike. Welcome back. I'd like to do a very brief tribute to a beautiful actress, a beautiful lady who died just a few days ago at the age of 92, a lady named Jane Powell. And she was a big star at MGM during the Golden Age, beginning in, I think it was 1944, when she was only about 14 years old. She signed a contract with MGM, debuted as a star, only made 19 feature films altogether, but she was a big star, a big important star at MGM up until the late 1950s. And while I was very moved when she passed away, and it's not because Jane Powell was always one of my favorite stars from the Golden Age. Truth be told, I've only seen five of her films, all of which I own, which I'll talk about here. But there was something about the fact that someone, another important person from that era, from that whole um, world of the cinema, has left us, and it really affected me. I was very sad. I'm very sad to have lost somebody from the world who came from that time. Anyway, I'm blathering on like a fool here. She's probably best known for this classic musical from 1954, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, co-starring with Howard Keel. Fantastic movie that I think everybody in the world needs to see. This is probably best known for its great dancing choreography by Michael Kidd and directed by Stanley Donen, a perfect showcase for Jane Powell and her beautiful soprano voice. Now, you have to realize she started out in 1944, going into the 50s as a great star. This was back in an era when people would get all dressed up to go to to go to the movies to watch the girl next door sing in a high soprano voice. People like Deanna Durbin and Gloria Jean, and also singers like Judy Garland, who of course had a completely different kind of voice. But it was that era when people would go watch the girl next door sing, and just have little romantic adventures. And it was definitely a time that has long passed us. She's also well known for this film. 1951, she co-starred with Fred Astaire in Royal Wedding, and not only did a lot of great singing, but also danced with Fred Astaire and kept up with him very well. She was also a good dancer in her films. So, very versatile lady, also a decent actress. And this is an interesting film because she was called in at the last minute to replace Judy Garland, who had also replaced June Allison. So this was not written for Jane Powell. It was not intended for her to match up with Fred Astaire, but she rose to the occasion, did a very good job. The only other films I have that she did, I have this double feature thin pack, which must have come out of a box set. Found this at Big Lots years ago. It's been sitting on the shelf. These these two films are from 1950. Nancy Goes to Rio, where she plays the daughter of Ann Sothern, who's also another beautiful singer, and 2 Weeks with Love, which takes place back in either the early 1900s or the gay 90s, and she was doing a lot of very traditional music and co-starring with Ricardo Montalban, who was her very handsome leading man, and she was madly in love with him and all this sort of thing. And also a supporting role by Debbie Reynolds, who was just starting out, and she was a couple years younger than Jane Powell. The final thing that I have, this is one of her last films made at Universal, The Female Animal. This is a black and white, non-musical, very serious, definitely a soap opera, kind of a woman's picture for the time. She plays the daughter of Hedy Lamarr, and who is a very troubled actress, and a troubled relationship between the two women, and they are both vying for the same man, played by George Nader. So it's a very interesting film, pretty well done, and extremely well acted by Jane Powell. I was actually surprised at how good she was being a dramatic actress. But she stopped making films in the late 1950s when she basically couldn't get work anymore. They were not making those girl next door musicals. She talked about on this disc for 2 Weeks of Love. There's an interview she did on Turner Classic Movies with Robert Osborne, and she talked about what it was like to leave MGM at the time when musicals were no longer in fashion, and she talked about knowing what it meant no longer to be wanted. And it was a very difficult thing for her, a very difficult transition. But she kept working. She went into television. She did a lot of theater, and was still working up in the early 2000s. And I just I was so impressed by her in this interview. I've seen it before, and I watched it again the other night, and was just so impressed by what a truly nice, honest person she was, and how she always felt that she never really belonged in that MGM family atmosphere of great stars. She was in awe of almost everybody that she worked with, and never felt that she quite belonged. Although she had nothing but good things to say about everyone, her contemporaries like Elizabeth Taylor and Roddy McDowall, Debbie Reynolds. She had good things to say about Louis B. Mayer, the head of the studio, which is not uh, usually what comes out of most of those great stars in their conversations. But she actually liked the man. She had good things to say about Joe Pasternak, who was her most frequent producer, and she was just a really decent individual. Jane Powell had 5 marriages, and her last marriage, which was her longest and happiest, she was married to a very well-known child actor named Dick Moore, and they were quite the love match. They met sometime in the 1980s, I believe it was, when Dick Moore was preparing to write a book about his experiences as being a child actor, experiences both good and bad. And he was interviewing a lot of other child actors, people who had started out either very young, as he did. He was only, I think, a few months old when he started in films, but also people who started out as adolescents, teenagers. So he interviewed Jane Powell. They got to know each other. They fell in love, and had a very long relationship. So, and he died just a few years ago. And anyway, so I guess my reason for talking about this, because Jane Powell was never one of my top favorites, but it's very sad to lose her. It's very sad to think that more and more of these people from that time of Hollywood and that cinematic reality are no longer with us. And it makes me think of an interview that Betty Davis did back in 1971 for the Dick Cavett Show. And this is when I was 20 years old. Betty Davis at that time had been in the movies, working in the movies for 40 years. That's almost as long as I worked at Kraft. So she talked about her career, some of the people she knew, and she was lamenting the fact that some of the people that she worked with and admired had passed away. For example, the very night before this interview in 1971, she found out that Gladys Cooper had passed away. So she talked about her. She also talked about Claude Rains, and she said it was very sad for her that we're not going to have the same world when all of these people are no longer with us. And when I was 20 years old, I heard that, and I process it in a much different way than I process it now when I think about these things. Because I have that Betty Davis interview, and I watch it quite a bit because it's so enjoyable, and it makes me realize that for someone like me, especially who dwells so much on the past and celebrates the cinema of the past more than the cinema of today, and I know that it's a very sad thing to realize that the world is changing, and the world that I knew, the world that I still love and revere, is slowly passing away. Not to be maudlin about it, but there is a certain amount of sadness and nostalgia. So I guess my hope and my prayer is that more and more people, especially the younger generations, will take a look back at the past and maybe find something that you can love and you can enjoy from all these wonderful people who came before us. And anyway, Jane Powell, rest in peace. Thank you for all the beautiful music. Comments are welcome.